What do you do when your worldwide trip is cut short? When your camper van is sinking into the sand with the tide coming in, and you meet a guy who's climbed Mount Everest back in the 70s, who's also a priest? Let's meet Vince Betham and his family, who decided to grab a camper van and travel the north of New Zealand all the way down to the bottom of the south. We talk about how driving across country can be more fulfilling than flying around the world, and why getting a franchise gym membership means you're always going to be staying clean. Just a few reasons why you'll finish this potty with itchy feet. And as always, we'd like to thank the sponsor of today's podcast, Dry Flush Toilets. If you haven't seen these amazing off-grid toilets, you really need to check them out. They're the cleanest, easiest, smell-free toilet that you've ever seen, and they recently won the best new camping technology in Australia. No more dumping chemicals or maintaining a composting toilet. Go to www.dryflush.com.au to see how they work. Let's get travelling.
Welcome to the Off-Grid Traveller podcast, where we meet the people who go off-grid and into a life of adventure, challenge, and grand new horizons. Whether on land or on sea, you'll meet some fascinating characters who've chosen the road less travelled and discover their best tips, worst moments, favourite destinations, and a whole lot more.
Welcome to the Off-Grid Traveller. Today I have Vince Betham, who is a gentleman who's, during the pandemic, travelled all the way from the top of New Zealand all the way down to the bottom. And he actually, the plans you had before the pandemic started was to do a worldwide trip with your family.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so it's interesting. Like, what was the plan for the world trip? Did you have everything, kind of the locations you wanted to go?
Yeah, we actually had flights booked and everything. So,
Whoa.
and that all turned to custard when we. So actually, if I take a step back, I'm married, got
Yep.
3 kids, and it was a couple of years prior to 2020. So COVID hit 2020, but a couple of years prior to that, I think it was 2017, 2018. My wife and I were having dinner for our anniversary. So it was just the 2 of us, and our eldest child had left home, and we were kind of talking about that, and then also talking about travel, how we had traveled together as a family for a little while, and it was a shame that she'd left, and we missed out on being able to do that one more time.
Yeah.
And then as we started talking, we realized that 2020 was the year where our eldest child, because she had gone away to the University in New Zealand, we realized that 2020 was the year that she would have graduated from uni, and our middle child graduated from high school, and our youngest child would be starting year 9. And it was like, hey, that's like the perfect window of opportunity to go and do something, go overseas as a family. That could be our last opportunity. And so we started, that was when we planted the seed, and the ball started rolling from there. And like you were saying before, we went to Thailand. So we left Brisbane. I left my corporate job of 20 years, been in the corporate world for 20 years. And our flights were all booked to travel around random places that we hadn't been to before, like India, Russia, Turkey, Middle East. We had flights booked, and we went to Thailand because we're going to use it as a base. Because we love Thailand, and it's also low cost of living, etc. We got to Thailand January 2020, and then that's when everything the whole world turned upside down.
Just shut off.
And we got stuck there. We couldn't leave. But we loved it, and because we're in Hua Hin, a couple of hours south of Bangkok, and we're in a nice house in a gated complex, so we're safe, and food and all that, there's no problem. So we're all good, but we thought, oh, we better get out of here. But at the time we were thinking, we can't travel the world. Our flights were all cancelled. What can we do, given that we have our family all together? This possibly for the last time like this, before they go and get their own partners and families, etc.
Yeah.
And my wife and I, even though we're both New Zealanders, we both grew up, born and raised in the North Island of New Zealand. So my wife, Wellington, me, Auckland. We'd never really done much travel in the South Island, which is one of the most beautiful places, not just in New Zealand, but in the world. And so we thought, hang on, what if we can get back to New Zealand? because New Zealand was closed, borders everywhere was closed. But we thought, well, if we can get back there, we could just go and see the South Island.
You've got
So
you've got
kind of
the
started from there.
Yeah, you've got the
Yeah.
most beautiful place in your back garden, and it's
Yes.
taken the world to turn off for you to go, well,
For us to go and
actually,
do it.
hold on, we've actually got an incredible experience there. I just want to, it's funny because obviously we were talking about it beforehand, just before we unpacked that, is that you were in Hua Hin and I was in I was in Chiang Mai at the same time.
Yes.
And it's funny because you
Okay.
were saying that in January everything closed off, and me and my wife, we were like, do we go to England or do we go to South Korea? Do we go to England or South
Yeah.
Korea? England looked like the world was exploding, and Korea seemed like they had everything figured out. So we went there, and it's just, you know, even though these crazy things happen, I don't know if you remember when you were going in the plane, like the flight, and you landed in Australia for the first time, or to New Zealand. They had masks, we had army around us. You're just going like, oh my gosh, like this is
It was
legit.
crazy, eh?
Right?
It's like out of a movie. It just
Yeah.
seemed so surreal. It was like, is this really happening?
Put it in your ear, look it in your eye, like, and you're just like, am I going into some sort of zombie apocalypse right now? Like that
Yes.
was terrifying.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to
Yeah.
bring that up because that I will never forget that. And then you do your 2 weeks. You know, you go into the little home for a bit, and then so you did. You were in New Zealand. You're from the north. Please continue.
Yeah. So we got to New Zealand. So actually we were stuck in Thailand for 6 months. We got a repatriation flights.
Yep.
From Thailand to Australia. We had to quarantine in Australia, stayed for a week or two, and then to New Zealand because our middle child wanted to do university in New Zealand, so we went to take him over there.
Yeah.
And then we got to New Zealand. We had to quarantine in Christchurch hotel there. And while we were in there, I was just looking online at camper vans, motorhomes, all that sort of stuff, and making inquiries, ringing up on the phone, etc. And found a few that we actually wanted to go look at when we got out of quarantine. So as soon as we finished quarantine, we called flights from Christchurch up to Auckland, and just went out and started test driving these vehicles, and ended up buying a camper van.
So what, to go into that then, so you said there were a few that really caught your attention. Do you remember off the top of your head which ones you were like, oh, this would be a great family adventure vehicle?
We're kind of looking at the smaller ones. So we only needed something that could fit 3 to 4 people. Yeah. So we're looking at like smaller motorhomes or camper vans that had a couple of beds in them. Yeah. And so the bed, the one we ended up buying was a Toyota Hiace camper van, which we bought in Auckland, which was really good. We're really happy. I was really happy that we ended up buying that, just because it ended up suiting our travel plans from there. So it was I think it was 2008.
Yeah.
So it wasn't too old. It was the same size as a normal long wheelbase van. So you could just drive it anywhere. You could park anywhere. The only thing you couldn't do, it was high top though. So the only thing you couldn't do was go in underground car parks. But in terms of anything else, you just park anywhere, drive anywhere like a normal car or van.
That's all right. So even because look, if you're not going to be parking, New Zealand overall is pretty safe anyway, and I'm guessing there's parking pretty much everywhere if you look for it, right? So did you have any problem with it being that high, or you just minimize your point of going towards those sort of locations where you park underground anyway?
Yeah, I can't even. Maybe it only happened once where we went to an underground car park and say, hang on, we can't go in here. But the rest of the time, it's parking on the street or just normal car parks, no issue at all.
And because it's that van size, you literally, like you said, you can just park it anywhere. So like you could be in the city, or you could be out in the countryside, and you'd never get any problems or qualms about it. That's interesting.
100%. Yeah, it had 2 double beds that you had to make up. So the bottom one was a double bed, and then you had one above, which
Mm.
was more like a king single. But the interior height of it was really good. When the beds were packed away, I could stand up in the van and move around easily, and I'm 6'1", so the height was really good. And it had 5 seat belts in it as well, so you could just use it as a commuter van.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, so if you're driving around, you need to make sure you've got enough seat belts. If you buy a camper van, that's just something to think about. And it was automatic, so it was really easy to drive. You just drive it around like a car, or just a normal van, fast,
Yeah.
easy, park anywhere. Setup is super easy, so you go onto camping grounds.
Yeah.
I see people come in with big motorhomes or caravans, and then it takes them a little while just to set everything up. But we literally just drive into the spot, plug in the power, and
Yeah.
boom, we're good to go. In literally less than a minute. And then when we want to move on, just pull the power out, and then we're off. We're not stuck to the camping ground, having to use it as a base. We can just go anywhere.
So because that just tells me that your view on it, Vince, was to find something which was king of convenience, in the sense of like, can we get an all-encompassing unit, which then when we're on the road, we don't have to focus on anything but plug and play.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Because last night I was trying, because it was a couple of years ago, so I'm trying to
Yeah.
remember what we did. But we were in New Zealand from July through to December, and we
Yeah.
visited approximately 40 towns, cities, give or take. And so we
Wow.
were traveling a lot. So on average, we were going to a new town every 2 to 3 days. Some towns we stay there just for one night because it's like in transit. Other towns we might stay there for 5 days because it's a city.
Things to do, right?
Small. Yes, yeah. The downside of the van though is that you bloody have to set up and pack down the beds every day. There's some days we don't because we get lazy, but because you got wooden slats you've got to put in place and then put the mattress cushions on top.
Yeah, but
So
you're
it's like making your
driving.
bed but a bit extra. Hey?
You're driving, so you just get the other family members to do it, right?
Yeah,
It's just-
yeah.
That's the way. That's
It
the way
wasn't too bad.
forward.
I mean, that was the only downside, besides the
Yeah.
space. But with the space, spending most of our time traveling, and then if we're at a place, we're exploring and outside anyway. So it
Yeah,
doesn't
so it
matter.
becomes your garden, doesn't it? Everywhere becomes your garden. You're literally in there for X amount of time. You're going out, and like, just out of your mindset, because I know New Zealand's got a different temperate climate from Australia. Was it bad weather? Was it good weather? How did it fare?
Most of it was amazing weather.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, we were so fortunate. We were so fortunate. We had amazing weather. New Zealand is quite easy to travel through. It's obviously a much smaller country. It's about 1,600 kilometers long.
yeah.
So um, compared to go, it's nothing compared to like trekking through Australia.
No.
Australia's just a whole nother level. But that's the beauty of New Zealand. It's quite easy to travel through it. Good roads, and of course amazing um, sights to see. And even though we went to 40 towns, there's still so much that we didn't get to see.
Yeah, because you said
Yeah.
it was about a 5 to 6 month trek that you did from top to bottom, right?
Yes, yeah. So we flew up to Auckland, ended up buying a camper van there, and then we drove right up to the very top of the North Island.
Wow.
Have you been to New Zealand?
No, I haven't. It's on my
You got to
list,
go.
mate.
You got to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can take me
So
in
the
the
very
camper van
top.
if you want.
Yeah. I recommend it. But yeah, the very top of the North Island is a place called Cape Reinga,
Yeah.
and you're literally there. You can see the Tasman Ocean and Pacific Ocean colliding, and we started from there and just made our way down, stopping our towns along the way. The North Island, we kind of just went down the middle because we've been through the North Island many times before, so we didn't go to the coasts.
Yeah.
And then we caught the ferry across the South Island. In South Island, we went down the east coast all the way to the bottom, and then Stewart Island back up the west coast. But we didn't. In terms of planning, we kind of made it up as we went along.
Yeah.
So we would plan maybe two to three towns max in advance.
Yeah.
We would work out, what are the must-see cities or sites that we definitely have to go to, and then we would look at the different routes to get there. And okay, oh, we could go this way, we'll go that way, and then yeah, that's about as much planning as we would do, and then we just book campsites as we went along.
And you because you mentioned to me beforehand as well that during that time, because obviously it was the pandemic, there was barely anyone at those sites as well. So
Yeah,
you were in this kind of, obviously it's bittersweet because their businesses are in a bit of a weird position, but you're at the same time giving them that the stimulus of going, hey, we're a family that thought, why not? Let's go traveling
yeah.
around New Zealand. And did you meet any other people who were doing the same thing? They were like, we can't leave, so you've got these little pandemic families adventuring around New Zealand.
Wow. Actually, I don't think we did. We never really stayed at places long enough to get to know
Yeah,
people. I've met some really interesting people though, but they were people that lived there at the towns we
the
were in.
locals. Yeah.
Yeah, the locals. Some amazing people I met. Like for example, in Franz Joseph, we met this priest. His name is Father Mike. We went to this parish one Sunday, just randomly in this small little Catholic church. And after his mass, we're just talking to him, and I think he's in his mid-70s, and
Yeah.
he was the first. He was part of the first New Zealand expedition to climb Mount Everest
Okay.
way back in the day. He was a tour guide in Antarctica,
What?
but he was talking about his going up Mount Everest. So Edmund Hillary was obviously the first New Zealander to go up, but that wasn't a New Zealand expedition. I think that was a British expedition.
Right.
Anyway, Father Mike went up, and he was talking about how he went up, and they saw someone. There are other groups trying to go up, but they were turning back and coming down as they were going up, and there was one group just ahead of them, and they literally saw someone fall off the mountain, pass
No.
away. So that group came back down after that happened, and his party, it got down to him and one other guy because the rest of their party just couldn't. It's just really, really difficult, harsh
Yeah.
conditions, and he got to the point where he estimated they could see the summit, and maybe it was he reckoned 5 hours was all they needed to get to the top. But I think that they didn't use oxygen for this thing, and they're at the point where they knew 100% that if they went, they would lose fingers and toes.
Wow.
They're at the because their things were wet or frozen. They were 100%, and then there's a really good chance that they might not actually make it anyway. And so they had to make a really tough decision of those two, him and the other guy, of turning back, even though they could see it just ahead. Yeah.
Mate,
Yeah. They're just amazing people like that.
wow.
Legend, absolute legend.
First of all, toes and fingers definitely come ahead of the end of the top of Everest. But we're talking about, this is what you said, he was one of the first. So this has got to be what, 50 years ago, or maybe even longer that he did that. So these are different times as well, whereas now you'd have all these different equipment, you'd have satellite, everything, right, to make sure that you've got the ability to do that. He couldn't ask anyone for help on the radio potentially. Oh man, sorry,
they
that's
didn't
just
even
blowing
have
my mind.
they didn't even have oxygen tanks or anything. These are OG legends.
OG legends. And you met him,
yeah.
and that's like, that comes down to something I've spoke about on this podcast before, is that go and talk to locals, because 9 times out of 10 their story is going to send your brain off into another adventure. Like, and I'll ask this, and I'm sure you may or may not. Are you planning on going to Everest now?
Base camp is on my list. Yeah.
See,
I value my life. I'm not a climber. I'll keep it real.
Yeah.
I'd love to, but
Yeah.
you never know. Yeah.
Once you get to base camp.
Yeah.
Well,
have you done it, or are you thinking about it?
So for me, like the cold affects me pretty badly, right? Like my fingers and my toes get rapidly cold, and I love the cold, but I'm very aware that I'd be the guy that's, with no fingers by the end of it. So logically, I should be heading to the islands and being nice and
Yeah,
warm. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
can't argue how my body feels.
Listen to your body. Yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah.
So that's really cool regarding meeting locals and just understanding these crazy stories. But were there any times when you were on the route that you were like, oh, this is a bad day? Like we've just had one problem after another happen.
Yeah, I was trying to think of one. Like, we didn't have any massive challenges, to be honest. It was just like the most amazing year of my life. But there was one day, there was the scariest moment was at a place called 90 Mile Beach, which is in Northland, near the top of the North Island. It's a very long, remote beach, which is
Yeah.
also officially a highway. So vehicles allowed to drive on it, including tour buses, normal cars. They can drive like a motorway, high speed. And so we stayed there for a couple of days, and I thought, hey, well, let's just drive the van on, give it a go. So we put some food in the van. The plan was to drive onto the beach and find a nice spot to have lunch. And we're driving along on 90 Mile Beach. And when you're driving, you stay on the wet, compact sand because
Okay.
it's quite hard and firm.
Yeah.
Driving along, and then eventually found a particularly scenic spot and decided to stop and park up there. But as I turned the van to park up, I ended up driving on sand that was very dry and soft, and
So you
the
just
van,
started spinning in it.
started spinning and got stuck. And we tried pushing, we tried using planks, all sorts of stuff, and we just couldn't get it out. Nothing worked. I got on the phone, called some tow truck companies. They said, "Sorry, we don't go on the beach."
Of
On the
course not.
beach, and the tide, the tide started coming in,
Oh,
and it was the first time in my life for a very long. I can't remember the previous time when I literally felt absolutely helpless. I just
wow.
like, what am I going to do? The tide's coming in. My family's here. There's this new camper van we just bought, and then a couple of guys driving past in this little small Suzuki four-wheel drive. They drove past, and I looked at them, and then they turned around and came back.
Oh, rock and
They
roll.
got out of the car and they started laughing because I'd seen this happen, because they were locals. They'd seen this
Yeah.
happen. So many other people come in from out of town and getting stuck in the sand. And they just got their tow rope and pulled us out. I was just so grateful for those
Oh.
guys. Oh, mate, yeah. I'll never make that mistake. The funny thing is when you're driving onto the beach,
Yeah.
because there's a couple of entry points onto the beach, and there's all these warning signs, big warning
Nah.
signs saying "Be careful," and I've literally got photos of tour buses and cars stuck in sand, uh, in the water that had been overtaken by the tide. But despite seeing all these signs, we just carried on driving. Never
Oh,
gonna do that again.
well, like you
Yeah,
said,
yeah,
so it was the best year of your life. So you were living on cloud nine at that point, right? And so, so
yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
it
And then
won't
that
happen to
happened.
me. I don't mind.
Yeah,
No. And then
yeah,
it happens
yeah.
to you. Welcome back to Earth. And
Yes.
then when you feel everything's gone, you've got again locals coming out of nowhere to save the
Oh,
day, and then
yeah.
bringing you back onto cloud nine because within what how long was you stuck there?
Ah, between half an hour and an hour, I think.
Okay, so you
Yeah,
were
yeah.
slowly getting to that point where you think like this is
Oh, it
happening
might have
now.
been an hour. It might have been an hour, yeah, because I remember the tide coming in. Yeah, yeah. But those locals are absolute legends. I'm so grateful to those guys for their, yeah, happens to be driving along the beach that day instead of the road. They decided to drive on the beach. Yeah.
I was lucky
Yeah,
they had
yeah.
four wheels, 4-wheel drive as well. Because that would have been how heavy was your camper van? Do you remember?
Not sure on the weight. Sorry. Yeah, I had no idea how much it weighed.
Heavy.
It was a long wheelbase and converted to a camper van, so it's pretty heavy.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, pretty
That's
heavy.
that sounds cool,
But
mate.
I wouldn't mind driving on the beach again, but definitely would only do it with a four-wheel drive next time. Yeah,
Mm, mm. Well, so,
yeah, yeah.
and that so that because obviously you wanted to do the global trip around the world, right? That's
Mm.
got switched, and then you started doing the camping trip. Now, I'm guessing there may be a plan for the future for you to go travel again. Would you be ever doing a camping trip again, or are you thinking of just doing like that kind of round the world trip? What would be more of an interest to you?
That's a good question. Um, uh, well, funnily enough, because our youngest child now,
Mm,
he's 16 at the moment, going on 17. This is his last year of school. So
right.
just the other day, my wife and I were thinking about it. Oh, well, maybe we could do something next year. He could take a gap year before he does uni, and we could just do something. And we were talking about um, Thailand again, and or spending some time in Samoa,
Yeah.
Pacific Island. My wife and I are both Samoan. Our parents born and raised there, and then they emigrated to New Zealand, which is where my wife and I were born.
Oh, awesome.
Uh, but it would be cool to spend some time in our parents' homeland and experience the culture there.
Yeah.
Yeah. The third option is maybe Australia, but doing tripping around Australia, but that's next level. So
That's a big
yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean George is doing that. I'm not sure if I'm quite ready for that yet, but yeah, we'll see.
Well, and then it's understood like because I've got some friends who are currently in America who are doing the road trip around America,
Oh,
and
cool.
their truck they bought a truck and then it exploded. So
Wow.
they've got a video of it and it's in fire, flames and stuff like that. And they got another one, but it's just really funny because
Yeah,
they
I
were
was gonna
really
say.
they did a video going, oh, it's great, we've got this, it's really cool. And then the next day they were
And
like,
boom.
it's on fire over there. So,
Damn.
but it's interesting that like in your mind you think that maybe a road trip would be more uh interesting for your family as a unit thing to do than to actually go to these locations and
Oh,
travel around the
flying
world.
again.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Flying hasn't really crossed my mind again, just because I know flights are very expensive.
that's
Yeah, I've
true.
I've gone to New Zealand a few times in the last 6 months, and flights are really pricey. They're nowhere near as cheap as they were pre-COVID.
Mm,
And then when they start coming down, we might think about that again. And funnily enough, when you talk about an American road trip is on my bucket list anyway,
yeah, me
is to
too.
go from West Coast to East Coast, and then possibly fly to Europe from there. But yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. Big,
yeah.
that's a big one though, and that
Maybe.
takes a
But
lot
that's
of
a big one
planning.
too.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
yes.
think I think for me, if I were in your boots, I would probably you got Aussie so close to you that doing even like the East Coast or North Coast, you're there right now. Doing those sort of areas would be an easier route, and then you know the big one is when your kids are a bit older and they can drive as well, and maybe you can take
Yeah,
them to a couple of the American bars when they're 21 or something, so you
yeah,
can.
yeah.
Or if you wait till before they're 21, then you can go to the bar with your wife, and then they can drive you home.
Well, they're doing that in New Zealand. Like I was here last month. So two of our kids are in their 20s. So
Yeah,
one's 25, soon the other one's 20. He's 21 now. 21, 22, 21. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So he was driving me around after a few beers. Yeah,
that's the way forward, right? that's
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's why you have them. Um, but yeah, no, brilliant, mate. Look, the only thing I really wanted to more to ask you is just, do you have any like recommendations on tech or anything that when you were on your trip that you were just like, we're so glad that we have this? Like we spoke to people before where they've said stuff like, it's really good when you're on a boat in the middle of the sea to have like this software, this app that allows you to track your positioning, even if it's small bits of data. Did you find that there was anything that you were like, this has made my trip 100 times better?
uh, tech. I did have some tech toys in the van. Like I put in entertainment system, GPS, TV, and that. But the things that came to mind, not necessarily tech, but so when we were in New Zealand, we got mobile plans that had big data on them, so we
Mm,
could. And there are three of us doing most of the trip, so me, wife, and our youngest. And so we had a shared data plan with Vodafone New Zealand, so we could just get online anywhere. And so my son was doing school, He was doing school through Brisbane,
That's so cool
distance
as
learning.
well.
Yeah, and I was doing. I have a couple of e-commerce businesses, so we needed to have access to the internet all the time, every day.
Yeah.
And so, because we had so much data available to us on our mobile plans, we could do that from anywhere. And we also had enough data for entertainment as well. So that was one. The second one that for New Zealand anyway, which is really cool, was we got gym memberships. We
Mm.
signed up to Snap Fitness, so it's similar. One of those franchise ones,
It's
24/7
everywhere, right?
gyms,
Yeah.
just everywhere, like it's like Jets and there. We signed up to Snap Fitness, and I don't know how many locations, but they usually had a gym in all of the major towns and cities in New Zealand. So we would go there most days if it was available, not just to exercise, but also use their showers.
Yeah.
Um, so we use their showers a lot as well.
That's a really good
Uh,
point. That's a really, really
yeah.
good point. Is like you get one of those memberships, and then that's a month. Those franchise ones are normally lower price as well.
Yes.
And you get the showers, you get the amenities, you get a place to probably relax for a little bit.
Yep.
That's a really good reference point for anyone who's like, we live in a world now. You've got the internet at your fingertips. You can go to all these amenities and have nice showers instead of I'm guessing your one, the shower that you had on board was quite small, quite compact.
We didn't have a shower. We
Oh,
had
there you go.
so most we went to camping sites that had uh, you know showers, toilets, kitchens. In the
Yeah.
van, we had a kitchen with a gas stove, microwave, shelves and drawers and whatnot.
Mm,
Um, we had a portable toilet.
This episode of Off Grid Traveller is proudly sponsored by Dry Flush Toilets Australia, home of the world famous Lavio Dry Flush Toilet. This patented electric toilet has no chemicals, is not a composting system, and can be set up literally anywhere in under 60 seconds. It looks and feels like an at-home toilet to use, but it can be used anywhere with no external power or water, and it still flushes. There's also no cartridge to clean or empty, and it's perfect for camping, caravans, converted vans, boats, tiny homes, or anything off-grid. Go to www.dryflush.com.au and use coupon code OFFGRID to get a 10% discount on your toilet order today.
Yeah. So we just use the showers at the camping grounds and
mm,
at the gyms.
yeah,
Yeah.
gotcha. No, that's interesting. And then, what would you say is the third biggest necessity in your mind for traveling tech wise?
Tech-wise, things like power inverters and reversing cameras, but I think most people already have them. I'd just say if you don't have them, then get them.
Yeah.
And a dash cam as well. So because probably might be different to others because we were just traveling so much. So having a dash cam, we didn't have any accidents, but it was good to have that just peace of mind.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So to reiterate, gym membership, data pack for when you're on the road and living, working at the same time as traveling around, and then having power inverters to make sure you've continuously
You
got
can plug in.
plug-ins. Yeah, no, that's
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and the only other thing is, what would you say to anyone who is thinking about doing this, but they haven't found the right camper van yet?
Um. Yeah. Well, whether it's finding the right camper van or what, and if you're just thinking of doing it, just to take action. Yeah. Just do it. Just do it.
Just do
Um.
it.
Yeah. It's that old saying that a dream without action is just a wish. So just
Love that.
take action, make it a reality. Um, and ever since that trip, I've said to my wife several times, just at random moments, that year 2020 was by far the best year of my life. Just amazing experiences, not just for me, but also her and our son. Our other son was with us for half of it as well, just for them to be able to um, experience, just life experience, and see all those amazing sights in New Zealand. Yeah, there's some amazing places in New Zealand, um, particularly the South Island.
Right.
You got to do it. It's just one of the most beautiful places on earth. Um, and and you were saying before how you mentioned how we were there and there weren't a lot of people around, which was a blessing for us. So we didn't have to compete, but also, I felt sorry for the businesses, and
Mm,
it kind of manifested a couple of times in particular. I think when we went to Milford Sound, uh, which is often termed the eighth wonder of the world.
mm.
And we were walking up to the ferry, and we see all these signs of where you're supposed to be queuing up, and it shows photos of tourists queuing up, and there's just everything's just full. The wharf is just packed with people waiting to get onto the ferries. But there was hardly anyone around. We just
Yeah.
walk up and get on. And also when we went up to Franz Josef, um, which is a glacier. So we flew up on a helicopter. And the
Wow.
tour guide took us. There's glacial ice everywhere, small waterfalls, the purest water you'll find anywhere. And the landscape was just like something out of a science fiction movie. But the tour guide, when he was talking to us, and there was one point where he was almost kind of in tears. He was just so happy that we were there, and he's getting to make some money
Yeah.
and just interact with people and make some money. And yeah, it was like, oh wow, it's just so happy that we're here for them as well.
Yeah.
It was cool. It was cool.
Single-handedly keeping the traveling community afloat is Vince Betham and his
Oh
family
no,
back in 2020.
Doing our small part.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, loved
Oh,
it.
Oh, brilliant. Well, no, Vince, it's been amazing having you on the podcast, and you've been a flipping pleasure and a half, mate. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us today, and yeah, keep on traveling.
If you or someone you know would be an interesting guest on the show, we'd love to hear from you. We love speaking to everyday people who've taken to the open road or open seas for an extended period of time, or anyone that's set up their life in an off-grid location. Please email guest@offgridtraveller.com.au to get in touch. That's 2 L's in Traveller.
If you like that video, you'll probably like this one, and you'll really love this one. And as always, we want to thank you for joining us, and if you want to like and subscribe, it really helps the channel grow, and it means that we can talk about more travel, get more tips, and everything off grid. Cheers.